Well, hey folks, today is a bittersweet day to say the least. It's the first time in 62 years that my mom hasn't called me to wish me a happy birthday and to sing the happy birthday song over the phone to me or in person. And so today I want to just dedicate a few minutes to just this amazing woman. She was born in the greatest generation. And she was truly coming out of poverty in her life, where she had nine children in the family. Essentially, my grandma was on her own much of that time. And yet they many times struggled with lack of food, lack of heat, had to move many times, live in tiny homes with all those kids crammed in. And she taught me toughness from those lessons that she learned as a child. And what was remarkable about her story is that her family were close to the very end. They loved each other. And I always remember the story when Mom would tell us about having nothing but potatoes to eat, that she would pretend that her potatoes were they would cut the potatoes up into 3 portions on her plate, and they would pretend one was meat, a delicious steak, and every bite would just talk about how wonderful the steak tastes. The next would be their vegetable, whatever that was, and the next would be their potatoes. And they would just rave about how amazing it was, this food that they had. They played that game because they had no other choice but to make the best out of a really bad situation. This woman defines toughness, and in that process brought that to her own children, her own family. I remember coming down for breakfast at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she would already have fresh bread baked somehow that morning, oatmeal ready to go in the wintertime, and Dad and I would have that for breakfast. Mom would head out the door to go to work in a factory, and come home later that night after working an 8-hour shift, after driving an hour each way, and then make dinner and rinse and repeat that cycle for years. Never once did I hear her complain, ever, about the life she was given. She just didn't. She just lived that life to the best of her ability with a positive attitude. She would also raise these massive gardens, and yes, the kids helped. She made us all work hard, taught us how to make the garden grow well. She knew how to manage that garden incredibly well. And then we would can all that food, hundreds and hundreds of quarts and pints of corn, carrots, you name it, beans, everything out of that garden was put to good use. And then she would buy chickens. We would butcher up to 100 chickens in a year. Incredible that this woman was able to keep moving forward instead of being a victim, instead of feeling sorry for herself and the tough lot she was given to start her life. I also remember another story about her and Dad, and when they first got married. Mom, I think, left home when she was about 16 and went out, married my father, and he was in the military. And some of the happiest moments of her life were during that time, when her and Dad made it out of their house, out of their families, into a new life on the east, wherever Dad was, in New Jersey, I think, somewhere. And she would talk so glowingly about how they would take the change from their jar and go down to the grocery store and buy a loaf of bread. And Mom was always embarrassed that she, instead of taking it to the bank and getting it converted into cash, she would take the pennies and nickels and count them out for the bread. I just thought that was an amazing story, and yet she remembered it so fondly as part of their bonding together and starting their new life. And it was just an incredible experience. And again, no one gave them anything to start their lives, but yet she continued to move forward in her life and had 5 children of her own, worked for decades in various jobs, but always her family was her priority, and that never changed. Especially as she then became a grandma, and I will tell you, all 14 grandchildren made it to her funeral last week, and as well as all of her children, and it was remarkable to see the love that her family has for this amazing woman. She taught me about toughness in that whole process. Another thing she taught us about was forgiveness. And, I mentioned that much of her childhood was without a father in her life very often. And it was because he had a terrible disease called alcoholism. And he apparently was an amazing man. I never met him. But when he was sober, he was as good as gold. Everybody loved him. He was very much known in the community as somebody who people loved, but he did have a terrible disease. Towards the end of his life, he finally got sober. And I think, the lesson out of that is that, forgiveness comes in many stages of life. And I think about how my mom must have had a chance to be bitter and hateful and resentful for the fact that her life was so tough because she didn't have a father who could keep a steady job, and they always had to move. I think about that and just am so amazed at how she learned to forgive. And that's a lesson that I've learned in my own life, that life is too short to hold on to grudges and hold on to resentments and live in the past. And I think that comes from my mom. She was not a resentful person. She was not a bitter person. She was just somebody who just kept moving forward and didn't dwell on what could have been, what should have been. So I really think she gave me the gift of forgiveness in that process in my own life. And hopefully others have forgiven me for things that I've done that haven't been the right way, perhaps. I also think that the final lesson she taught me was perseverance. And one of the things that Brooke made me extremely proud recently was in calling me. She was working on another house that she has in the family. She was helping her sister out, doing some tiling and doing some work remodeling the house. And she called me very proud of herself because she was remarking that, I always persist and I continue to say, we just never give up. We just don't, as our family. We figure it out. That's our motto. And she was very proud that without me there pushing her, prodding her, she figured it out. Some challenges that they had in their little construction project. And it made me really proud. But it came from what I learned from my mom. She was amazing at that. She just always kept going. And one of the coolest things that's part of perseverance is creative thinking and the ability to always problem solve and be looking for another solution. There's always an answer if you just keep looking. And so I thought I'd share that with you. It is my birthday. I'm going to stay as positive as I can possibly stay, as grateful as I can possibly be. I am forever grateful for that amazing woman. She is with us every day. She will be in my heart just like my dad's in my heart every single day. And I just love her so much. And I miss her greatly. But I have her with us in my children. I see them growing up. I see all her grandchildren. And I see her in them. I see that in my sisters. And it's just such a remarkable thing to think about, that none of us will be here forever on this earth, but we can be here in heaven forever. And mom and dad are dancing together in heaven, and it's a beautiful thing. Mom no longer has pain. Dad no longer has pain. They can only have the joy and love that comes with being part of God's children and being able to enjoy the rest of eternity in heaven. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, but thank you so much for paying attention for a few minutes and letting me talk and brag about my beautiful mom. I love you, Mom.